tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Good morning everyone. So today we are going to do the last lecture for this semester, and I'm going to conclude the topic on non-human influence. So till last time for 2-3 lectures we discussed how a non-human could possess another being and take the control over its entire mind and matter, body and the mind, and makes the living being to behave according to the desire of the non-human. And in this regard we have two opinions actually. Both the opinions suggest that the mind stream of the living being is distorted, or its natural state will be interrupted by the power of the non-human, and it starts to function a bit weirdly, and the being starts to behave, its body starts to behave according to the desire of the non-human who possessed. Then the opinions were, and also it was agreed by all the teachers, that 5 sense door consciousnesses are happening while the non-human are happening of the being who is being possessed during the possession. Then the disagreement means there was no clarity on based on whose consciousness was involved in physical and verbal activities. According to one theory, it is done by the living being, the consciousness of the living being, and the non-human is acting as a causative subject. So the living being is performing the activities according to the desire of the non-human. According to another theory, it is not possible to exactly say whose consciousness are directly involved, and it is something that cannot be fully comprehended because it's a function of it's an incomprehensible function of the karma vipaka iddhi. Then we went into a very detailed explanation on how we dissected the topic and discussed how this could be possible. And we also talked, according to the literature, according to the fundamentals, karma of the deeds that were done during the possession are accumulated by the non-human, not the living being. And based on that, we started to discuss whose karma dwara should be involved, whose vinyatti should be involved, and the relationship. Slightly we talked about the relationship between the karma and the vinyatti. And we also postulated the idea that it is possible that the activities are done by the non-human consciousnesses with the help of the body of the living being. So in that regard, the body is just an instrument used by the consciousness of the non-human. The question that arises in that opinion is how could two different santanas, bhinna santanas, could interact? So how could a consciousness of another being would make the body of another being to work? So so in the end we postulated another opinion saying that the non-human is entering the body of the living being and working it like a person driving a car. And we were not able to give conclusions on this. Only thing is we could increase our idea or the knowledge about mind and matter based on these explanations. Because all this shows that only when there is a mind and matter, these explanations are possible. The very basis of these explanations, actually the very basis of entire Buddhism, is dualism. It's only when mind and matter are two different elements, these kinds of explanations are possible. And these kinds of interference are also possible. A non-human can never, as explained, non-human explanation, positions as explained shows that there has to be some two different elements as mind and matter. But it's not proving, because it's just an explanation based on the fundamentals that we believe in Theravada. Then there are another two instances where non-humans could influence the other living beings. Since the topic was brought up, we have to finalize it, because related to Chittajarupas, what mattered was the possession. So whose mind is involved, whose Chittajarupas were involved in this. So we didn't come into a concluding idea about that, but according to traditional information, Chittajarupas seems to be belonging to the living being who is being possessed, though he is not accumulating karma. On the third idea we postulated, Chittajarupas could be of the non-human, and the Karajakaya, the body, would be of the living being, would be of the living being. So that's the point, that how could Chittajarupas of another being could make the living body to move of another being. And you also explained that it has happened within the dead bodies as well. So we can see some informations matching there, but still we didn't come into a conclusion based on the information that we have. So the topic was related to Chittajarupas, so its relationship was explained in the previous lecture. But as non-human possession is a big topic, influence of the non-humans to the other beings, so we have to, I feel it's better to conclude this topic by discussing about another two aspects of non-human influence. So in the handout I have given yesterday, there are two aspects influencing the bodies of living beings without possessing. So previously it was a possession. Possession means taking control over the mind and body entirely. So the mind, especially the body, the living being loses, the consciousness of the living being loses the control over the body. That is what is happening actually, because there is no such a soul called, a self called a living being. So it's against the fundamentals to say ultimately that the living being loses its control over the body. Conventionally we may say that, but in the ultimate sense what is happening is the mind is losing its capacity, its natural status, and the body starts to move according to the desire of another consciousness. That is what is happening over there. So we can say that the entire control of the body, control of the mind over the body is being interrupted by this possession. So it's like the non-human is taking control over the body and the mind of the living being. So here what we are talking is, without taking control over the mind and the body, non-humans could influence the two elements of the living beings. First is influencing the body. This could happen by causing certain effects to the body and also entering into the body. But still, no control is gained. We have a very important, very famous story mentioned in the Mara Tajjaniya Sutta, where the Mara entered the belly of Venerable Mahamoggallana, who was foremost in psychic powers in Gautama Buddha's dispensation. So once while Moggallana was in a monastery, inside a monastery, he felt some discomfort in his stomach, in his belly. Then he looked what has happened here. Then he understood that a living being has entered, a non-human has entered into his body. He felt as something like certain few rocks were, as if he has swallowed few rocks. So it was very heavy. So then when he investigated, he saw it was Mara who has entered into the body. Then he called the Mara and said, "Come out, I have seen you." Then Mara thought maybe Moggallana was just guessing, so I better stay silent and to check whether he actually saw me or not. Maybe he didn't see me. So then Moggallana read his mind and said, "Yes, I saw you, and I saw how you thought. You thought that maybe I have not seen you directly, I am just guessing, so I better keep silent. So I even read your mind, so please come out, there's nothing to hide." So then the Mara knew, okay, exactly he has seen me. So he came out of the belly and he stood on the window. And that time Mahamoggallana advised him not to do such activities, especially disturbing the Buddha and the Sangha, because he himself was such in Kakusanda Buddha's dispensation, and he accumulated lots of demerits by doing various bad deeds towards the Sangha, Buddha and the Sangha. Then, so according to this story, the Mara has entered into the body of Mahamoggallana, but he hadn't taken, he couldn't take the control over his body and the mind. So if the person is very, especially a noble being, would never be able to be, it cannot be possessed by any other living being. So how about a spiritually developed person? Seems like it is possible, because there is a story in which, in a sutra, actually it is mentioned in a sutra, where Mara possessed a Brahma, a lower Brahma. Mara doesn't have the influence on higher Brahmas such as Mahabrahmas. Mara possessed a Brahma of a lower realm. Brahmas are always higher than the Devas, higher than the Mara, but the Mara's power was such that he could possess a Brahma, and he talked with the Buddha, and the Buddha recognized that this is not the real Brahma who is talking, this is the Mara is using him, and he recognized him and said, I understand you, I know you have possessed this Brahma. So if a Brahma could be possessed, Brahmas are the spiritually developed beings, only ones who have attained jhanas will be born in the Brahma realm, and their patisandhi itself is very pure because it's the outcome of the jhanas. So then, so it shows that there is a possibility if a being is a putuja, but it's mentioned in the commentaries that very, very clearly a noble being cannot be possessed by the Mara, and it makes sense because a noble being is someone who has eradicated certain defilements at least, right? Fully eradicated defilements. And those defilements cannot come up again, and especially the Sakkaya Ditthi, the wrong view, is completely eradicated. And doubt is no more. So it shows that the person's mind is very stable and stronger than that of a Putujana. So it seems like even the person he is spiritually developed, some non-humans will be able to possess them, but it's not guaranteed that everyone could be possessed, because we don't read even a story of a bodhisattva being possessed by anyone, but possibilities are there. As long as one is a Putujana, such possibility is there. So here what has happened is the Mara has entered into the body of Mahamoggallana. And thing that we should keep in mind is Mahamoggallana was the foremost in psychic powers in Bodham Buddha Sasana. And he could even enter the body of Moggallana without him being aware of that. That's a very strange phenomenon. But after entering, when he felt the discomfort, Moggallana was able to screen or know that Mara has entered, and even he could read his mind. So he was very powerful in the psychic powers and abilities, but still Mara could enter. It's nothing mentioned whether Mahamoggallana had such a karma that he could be influenced by the Mara. And given his story in the life of Dusi Mara, if someone argues that Moggallana was prone to Mara's attacks, such attacks, because of his past karmas, we cannot rule out that suggestion, we cannot rule out that opinion. But somehow Mahamoggallana, Mahara entered his body, entered his belly. And this shows that non-humans could easily influence the bodies of other beings. And there are many instances where we see, even in present days, some claim that certain sicknesses were caused by non-humans. And it is obviously possible. If they can possess the mind and the body of an entirety of mind and body of another being, it's nothing to cause some damages or certain influences onto the bodies of another living being. It's really possible. And it is mentioned in the Paramatta Dipani that some female Gandhabis, they are one of the groups of the Chatur Maharajika realm who are living between the human realm and the Chatur Maharajika realm. So some female Gandhabas are said to be living in female bodies, and for their various purposes. Sometimes it is mentioned in books. So, and they can also cause lots of negative effects to the human body. We don't see much, normally we see some negative effects being caused on human bodies by non-humans, but it is possible that they may increase or strengthen or give some support to the human body as well. That is possible, but most of the cases we see detrimental effects to the human body. So this is the point. Non-humans can influence the other beings' bodies. If they can influence humans, nothing to say about animals and so forth. So they can enter and they can live on these bodies and cause some troubles to the human life. Yeah, so we shall read this. Sometimes non-humans influence the bodies of other living beings without possessing them. They could even enter the bodies, there should be a correction, enter the bodies of others. Merely entering the body of another being and possessing it are two different phenomena. Mara entered the stomach of Venerable Moggallana. It is mentioned in the Paramata Dipani that some female Gandhabas live in human female bodies. In such cases, non-humans do not take the mind and the body of the living being under its control. When influencing the physical body of other living beings, non-humans mostly bring discomfort or cause sicknesses to it. So that is what is normally happening. Then there is another, so influencing the body. And influencing the mind. Influencing the body and influencing the mind. So, influencing the mind could happen in two occasions. This is mostly giving certain objects to the mind, making the living being to think as the non-human wants. But still, it's not under the entire control. So, this influencing the mind happens in can happen in different occasions. Especially, it can happen while sleeping. Because during a sleep, the mind and the body both are in a weak state. Sleep is defined in Theravada as the weakness of the body, that the body is inactive and the mind itself comes into a very weak or sluggish state, we could say. So at that time, non-humans could easily influence the mind. And that is also only when the being is not an arahant, but still it's not taking control. So it could be done. Seems like they could bring this influence, they could make this influence on lower nobles. Then while awake, what happens is, I'm going to explain this in detail. While awake is, the stories say that non-humans could prevent the beings from thinking or having certain objects. So while asleep, they can make the living beings to think as they want, but while awake, the stories say they could prevent the beings from taking certain objects. They could influence the mind so it would not take such objects. The special case when Buddha was spending Vasa in Veranja, Mara made a spell, or Mara made a certain influence of all the citizens that they did not remember or recall that the Buddha is spending Vasa in their city, so they did not offer any food to him or to the Sangha. And there was a karma of the Buddha was also, Buddha's karma was also influencing, because what he has said to a past Buddha during his samsara. So they are somehow what the Mara has done was preventing the citizens from taking an object or recalling that the Buddha is spending Vasa with them. So we'll first talk about sleeping. During a sleep, normally the mind always falls into the Bhavanga stream, but it's not the case all the time, as we discussed in a previous lecture. During sleep, we have Viti processes going on, and some Viti processes we define as dreaming. In such processes, the mind takes an unreal object, imagined object, based on few reasons. We didn't talk about the reasons behind dreaming because it was not one of our topics. We talked about Chittaja Rūpas while dreaming. Now, what happens is the mind is in a very weak state due to the weakness of the body. And it mostly goes into the bhavanga stream, and it times to times comes up into the vithis, and the being may take certain various objects. Especially it may feel certain sensations as well that are through the five sense doors. And obviously many objects could be taken during a sleep, and if the sleep was interrupted frequently, if the person is not having a very deep sleep, surely lots of interruptions, lots of thoughts would occur during the phase of sleeping. Now what is happening here is, while a being is in sleep, mostly it goes into the bhavanga stream. At that time the non-human makes an influence to the mind, and what he does is it determines, may the living being think so. May the living being think so. So with this determination, the bhavanga stream breaks and viti consciousnesses starts to arise. And they take an object, an imagined object, parikappita ramana, as what was determined by the non-human. So this object, it's taking an object, not a real object, it's imagining an object. Imagining an object that was thought or determined by the non-human. And according to this process, it is said in Dhamma that the object, arammana, that was imagined by the living being is presented to the mind by the non-human. It's just a way of saying. These types of dreams are called devatopa sanghara. Devatopa sanghara. Devatopa sanghara. The dreams presented or brought forward by devas. The object was given by the devas. Upasangharati brings close, also offers someone. The object was offered by the deva to the living being. An object cannot be physically offered because we are talking about a mind-door process. Yes, 5-door processes, we may bring an object and make someone to see or make someone to listen a certain object by making a sound, possible. But to the mind-door, you cannot present such objects. So especially here, since it's an unreal object, it's real because in dreams we don't see normal real objects. Mostly they are creations of the hallucinations. But yes, sometimes we may get certain, we may experience certain real objects, but still under the weakness of the mind due to sleep. Still we can term them as dreaming because we may see very vague objects that are around us whilst we are still in a sleeping state. But especially when we are talking about dreaming, it is mostly an unreal object. It's an object that is thought by the mind. And that object, mind is made to think so and take such an object with by the determination of the non-human. So it shows that the non-human has a huge influence over the mind of the living being. If this could be done while we are awake, this would lead to bizarre situations, because if a non-human could make us to think as it wants, it will be very, very difficult in our day-to-day lives, and if they keep on doing that, we will find it very hard to get rid of that, and we'll lose the control over our mind. So it happens in a non-human position. Yes, in a non-human position is a completely different phenomenon, because so then one can argue if a non-human could possess the entire body and the mind and make it to work or function according to the desire of the non-human, why couldn't it just present an object to the mind of a being who is awake? But we don't see such phenomena most of the time, because what we think, the way we think is under our control most of the time. Yes, it's true that sometimes certain thoughts arise in our mind. That is mostly because of the influence of our past habits and so forth. We don't normally talk about ideas presented to the mind by non-humans. There are few instances in literature, but we have to deal it very subtly, meticulously, handle it. So normally, but while we are sleeping, yes, since the mind has lost its natural state, because during sleep the mind is in a weak state due to the weakness of the body. So it is quite easy for the non-human to influence the mind at this stage. And especially if the person has not eradicated the defilements, he is prone to dreaming. Dreaming, according to Theravada teachings, is an outcome of defilements. A non-arahant would never dream, and it has been discussed even during the third council, that non-arahants do not dream, because in dreams mostly we see object which is not real, and that kind of, even though it may be a sign of a future event that is going to happen, it may be a future event that is going to happen, but still the object is unreal. So therefore, according to Theravada explanations, dreams are outcomes of defilements, hence no arahants would dream ever. Dreams, if someone dreams, that's an indicator that he is not an arahant, according to Theravada fundamental. It's a very strongly established fundamental within the tradition. So now what happens is, here, since the mind also possess means not, the kilesas have not been eradicated in the mind stream, and since the mind is in a weaker state, it is possible for the non-human to influence the mind. And what it does is, it determines, may the living being think so, and the living being's mind emerges from the bhavanga stream, comes into the viti processes, and starts to think as the non-human has determined. At that time, it sees an object that was imagined, or that was an imaginary object, and the mind is thinking so due to the influence of the non-human, and that object is said to be presented by the non-human, and such dreams are called Devatopa Sanghara dreams. Yes, so we shall read this point. Influence in the mind of living beings. There are two occasions in which a non-human could influence the mind of other beings. While the being is sleeping, according to Vimati Vinodini, while living beings are asleep, some deities determine, may this being think thus. At that time, the sleeping being's mind emerges from the bhavanga stream and starts to think as the deity determines. This is a mode of dreaming. At that time, the object imagined by the living being is considered to be something presented to the mind by the deity. It's something that is considered to be presented to the mind by the deity, because such imagination happened due to the determination, due to the influence. It seems deities can easily bring such objects to the mind of other beings on such occasions, as both the body and the mind of the being is in a weak state during sleep. Such dreams are termed as Devatopa Sanghara Supina. So they are Devatopa Sanghara Supina, dreams presented by the non-humans or the deities mainly. Sometimes they can be true dreams. Some deities present because it is said that they have some sense of some understanding or sense about the future, what is going to happen. Therefore, some deities present give signs to the living beings showing what may happen or what is coming, what is waiting for them. And sometimes they can deceive the living beings by giving wrong information as well. There's a nice story about this. Once a monk wanted to cut a tree in order for his construction in the monastery. So there was a deity who was living in the tree, a tree deity, and he requested the monk not to cut the tree, but monk went ahead without considering the request. Then the deity was very angry with the monk. Instead of directly harming him, he arranged a strategy. What he did was, he presented or made the monk to have some Devatopa Sanghara dreams about the true future events that are surely going to happen. So when the monk saw some dreams, he was convinced that his dreams are true. That normally happens when you start to see certain dreams, or if you could dream before certain events and you get convinced that my dreams, I'm seeing things that would happen in future. And he got convinced about his dreams. Then what happened? One day he presented a dream in which the Thera saw the king is going to die in 7 days. King is dying in 7 days. He saw that dream. Then he wanted to inform this. Out of good mind, he went to the palace and informed this, and the king's wives, the concubines and the wives, were very afraid to hear this news, and they started crying. Then the king, it was a mess, and the king came and found out what was the reason, and he really got angry about what the monk has done, because actually should not have gone and informed the wives. He could have, if he had a doubt, he would have done it very nicely. So seems like the monk was not handling the situation well. So anyhow, the king got angry. Got very angry with the monk, and he made a punishment, like made a decree that if I don't die in 7 days due to giving wrong information and scaring my wives, that his hands and legs will be cut off if I don't die. So he counted the days, nothing happened, and the monk lost his legs and hands. And the deity got his revenge, because he lost his mansion because of the monk cutting. You can cut trees in skillful, like following Vinaya rules. Buddha has allowed that, but against the request made by the deity. So he avenged him for destroying his house by cutting the limbs, making his limbs to be cut actually. So we have to be careful in this sometimes. So it shows that you cannot guarantee whether a dream is true or not. We should not pay much attention to our dreams actually. Then while the being is awake, so this phenomenon is not seen commonly while we are awake. What can happen according to the literature is, while we are awake, certain non-humans could prevent us from taking certain objects, make us to forget certain incidences. And this also happened to Buddha, and Buddha also had a karma to experience to go through this hardship, because he observed Vasa. He was invited by a Brahmin to spend the Vasa in Veranja, a city called Veranja, after a very famous discussion he had with the Buddha, because he was accusing the Buddha in 8 ways, and the Buddha nicely refuted, or he nicely handled the accusations, and he was able to convince the Brahmin very nicely. This discussion is recorded in the first chapter of the Parajika Pali, how Buddha tackled this conversation. It's a very wonderful way he did that, and it shows his master class of handling accusations and dealing with the people who are opposing him. So somehow the Brahmin got convinced, and he invited Bhante, may you spend the Vasa with me. And Bodhisattva, in his long samsara, in past samsara, once accused a Buddha called Pussa, Phussa, Pussa, saying that these people, these monks and recluses, Buddhas, deserve to eat yava, some sort of, I think it's barley or something, yava, a type of a grain, instead of getting good food. So it was considered something that was not very nice those days, and he was not referring to good type of grains, but he was referring to something like inferior stuff. Then this Buddha Pussa is not, according to the information that we have from Buddha Vansa, is not the Buddha who appeared during the 4 Asankheyas. There is a Buddha called Pussa who appeared, if my memory was correct, 92 eons ago, Tissa and Pussa. This Buddha seems to be someone before the proclamation of the Dipankara. That's how it seems when you read the Apadana story, because the life of Bodhisattva during Buddha Pussa's time recorded in the Buddha Vansapali is different from what is recorded in the Apadana Pali. So it seems like there were two different Pussa Buddhas, and the one whom Bodhisattva accused should be before he got the proclamation from Dipankara Buddha. So therefore this accusation was waiting, this karma was waiting for an opportunity to torment the Buddha, and he was about to get yava. He was going to lose good food during throughout the entire Vassana period, and Mara somehow used this opportunity, and he was waiting to harm the Buddha, to disturb the Buddha, and he made a determination that none of the beings, citizens in the city would recall throughout the entire Vassana that Buddha is living here. Buddha is living here. Even the Brahmin who invited, ironically, couldn't recall that. It's a very embarrassing situation. If it happens to a monk, someone invites you to spend the Vassa and he never attends you, he never recalls you, then it feels like very embarrassing what has happened, what is going through. So Buddha knew what is going on because he knew the influence of the Mara, and also he knew the karma that was awaiting him. Luckily, what happened after the Mara had put the spell onto the city, horse traders, a group, one or two groups, if I remember, a few horse traders came and they established themselves out of the city gates, and they were out of the city. Then what happens? They had the yava grains with them, which they brought to feed the horses. And at the same time, the entire city was affected by a famine. People didn't have food to eat, and also they didn't even recall the Buddha was there. So everything, the causes gathered. And this was when the causes gathered, this was the time the Buddha was going to experience the karma that he had done, got the opportunity to give result when the causes have gathered. Then what happened? Because the spell was into the city, and they were outside the city, and they came there after the spell was made. So luckily, they got to know the monks were not having enough food, and they prepared yava grains to the Buddha and the Sangha. So Buddha had to depend on yava for the entire 3 months. It was not a very pleasant experience. And that was the result of the karma he blamed, accusing a past Buddha. And the thing what matters to us is the spell put by the Mara. Mara made a determination that none of the citizens would recall that the Buddha and the Sangha are living in their city, especially due to an invitation made by one of the renowned Brahmins of the city. And this shows that he was influencing the minds of the citizens. And this was preventing them from taking the object that the Buddha's presence. It was preventing. In the sleeping incident, while sleeping, the non-human could make the beings to think as it wants. But in the Mara's case, in the Veranja city's case, while the beings were awake, for the entire 3 months, he prevented them from taking such objects. So it's a custom of the Buddha. But for example, monks after spending the Vassa could leave the monastery even without telling the donor. There is no offense or rule for that. But it is not the custom. It's not very grateful. So normally we talk with the donor before we leave. That's the custom. But there's no offense for that. Buddhas would never do that actually. Whenever they were invited by a devotee, they always meet them before leaving the place. Then, as his custom, he went to the Veranjan Brahmin. It's not necessary for him to visit because the Brahmin who invited didn't visit him even for a single day after the invitation. It was very embarrassing actually. Then Buddha visited him. And at that moment when the Buddha had visited his house, that's the time he recalled, oh, I have invited Buddha to spend the Vassa here. So he was regretting, and he couldn't even believe what has happened to him. And it was the spell that was casted upon them by the Mara, which was preventing them from recalling. And he was a devout Buddhist, and he was a newly devout Buddhist, so he had a lot of faith in Buddha, but the Mara's influence was very strong. And then he offered robes and gave a good meal at the end, right, before the Buddha departed from the city. Here what has happened is, while the beings were awake, Mara had prevented them from taking objects. Then could the non-humans present certain objects to the minds of the living beings? Can they make us to think as they want? Seems there's not much information about this, but there is a story recorded in some Buddhist sects which does not belong to the Theravada sect actually, which is not found in any of the commentaries or sub-commentaries of the Theravada lineage. But it is found in a book called Saddhamma Ratanakara, which was written while the Kandy was the kingdom in Sri Lanka, the Kandian era. So this book was written, and it has some information that is not found in commentaries or commentaries or even in the Jataka Pali. The story is called Matuposaka Jataka, in which the Bodhisatta swam carrying his mother for 7 days. So this story is nothing mentioned in the Jataka books. Only we can find this in this book called Saddhamma Ratanakara. In that, according to that story, that was the first time the Bodhisatta in the long samsara had the thought of becoming a Buddha. While he was traveling in a ship actually, on the sea, with his mother, the ship wrecked and everyone was dying. Mother was asking him to swim and save his life, but the Bodhisatta, when everyone fell into the water, carried his mother, asked the mother to rely on his back, and he swam for 7 days, it is mentioned. And the mother was asking him to leave her and to save his life, but the Bodhisatta didn't give up. In the end, he came to a shore and he saved both his life and also his mother's life. At that time, mother was very pleased with his son's bravery. Simultaneously, a Brahma in the Suddhavasa realm, Anagami Brahma, had entered into a Samapatti, most probably a Nirodha Samapatti, and emerged from it. And he saw, because Brahmas could stay in Samapattis for a longer period, and he saw the Brahma realms, the Suddhavasa Brahma realm was almost empty, it's getting emptied. The reason was there were no Buddhas appearing for a long period in the human realm. Then he thought it's a great disaster that the time periods pass away without many Buddhas. It's better more Buddhas would appear, so at least a certain amount of beings would be liberated from this round of rebirth. It's not possible to liberate all the beings because it's an infinite number. Beings are infinite. So how much you reduce from the infinite, the number still would be infinite. But the ones who will be saved, ones who attain the Nibbana, would be surely free from the samsara. So he thought it's better to encourage beings, to find out the beings who are capable of becoming Buddha. So at least some beings would start this journey and eventually liberate at least some amount of beings from samsara. So at that time he saw this brave man who had saved his mother and himself by swimming for 7 days in the deep ocean while everyone died, and he didn't give up. His determination was so strong. Then he thought, this kind of a man of this caliber, a man who has such determination and courage, who is of that strength, is capable, seems to be capable in achieving this, because bodhisatta practice is something that cannot be done by all humans or all men. It's very daunting and it's terrifying when you listen to the stories of Bodhisatta sacrificing his eyes, ears, body parts, flesh, limbs, life becoming a slave. So reading the story, even just knowing the process that one has to go through to become Buddha, most of the beings would get away from the path and would not even have a thought of to become a Buddha. And he thought this kind of a person is capable of walking on this path. Then it is mentioned he gave a thought to the mind of this great man that I want to be he presented an object. The mechanism is not mentioned in the book because it is not an Abhidhamma book actually, just a story book. A thought was given to the mind of the Bodhisattva, this great man, that he wants to be a Buddha. And also the mother wished him, according to the story, as the stories goes, as it is presented these days, mother also wished that he may be a Buddha. The story, if my memory was correct, the story is telling that the thought was given to him by a Suddhavasa Brahma. So here it seems like, according to that story, he made a determination that this person may think thus, and that man had a thought that I want to be a Buddha one day. So he presented this idea. Seems like the same mechanism which takes place during dream has happened over there. But this story, I have to mention, is not something found in the Theravada literature. It's not found in the Jatakas, because there is a belief, especially in Sri Lanka, that this is one of the Jatakas in our book. No, this is not. This is called Matuposaka Jataka, and this is not the Matuposaka Jataka you find in the Jataka's book. Matuposaka Jataka found in the Jataka book is about a story of elephants. It's a different story. Here it's a story related to elephants, but this is a completely a new story to the Theravada tradition, and this is found only in the book, in a book called Saddhamma Ratanakara, which was written during the Kandian era. And that book contains lots of information about the Buddhas before Dipankara Buddha and how the Bodhisattva came this journey. Very nice stories are there, and there is a certain link to the Apadana Pali, because the storybook contains the names of two Buddhas called Brahma Deva and Gotama. Two Buddhas called Brahma Deva and Gotama. During the dispensation of Buddha Brahma Deva, the Bodhisattva started because he saw Buddha for the first time, and he made a mental determination that I would be a Buddha. But the initial seed was planted the day he saved his mother. Then there were 3 or 4 lives that he again made such determination that I would be a Buddha one day. And the story says that there is a story in which Mettaya Bodhisattva and this our Bodhisattva met, and he sacrificed his life to a female leopard. So all these are found in this book actually. They are not found in any Theravada literature, because Theravada literature doesn't contain any story prior to the Dipankara Buddha. No. Then he met the Brahmadeva Buddha for the first time, and he made a mental determination. We call Manopanidhana. Manopanidhana is mentally determined, seeing a Buddha. In the previous occasions, he made a determination without meeting a Buddha. And in seeing the Brahmadeva Buddha, he made such a determination. And that was the first determination he made. Then, after so many kappas, according to the stories, 7 asankheyas, he met Buddha, 7 or 9 actually. I forgot exactly the exact number. He met another Buddha called Gotama. And he made a determination by uttering the words that I will be a Buddha one. May I be a Buddha one day. And that's the moment he started his Panidhana, Vachi Panidhana. Now he started to say his determination in words. And meeting the Dipankara Buddha, he got the proclamation and he started his Mahapanidhana. And he started to say and work for it very seriously. The serious practice started from there. Then, so these 2 Buddhas are recorded in this book story, ancient Brahmadeva and the Gotama. So we have a reference to these 2 Buddhas not in detail, just the names are found in the Apadana of Yasodhara Theri. Baddhakachana, Yasodhara, the Bodhisattva's wife. Before her, she became a nun and attained arahanthood. And before her parinibbana, she said that there's no person who walked with you, along with you on this long journey like I did. And even I had been close to you more than Sariputta and Moggallana. And I have done so much merits in this journey, even more than Sariputta Moggallana, with you, together with you. And she said, we both met the ancient Brahma Deva and Gautama Buddhas together. And I was with you even by then. Doesn't mention about the eras. So these two Buddhas are out of the 28 Buddhas we know, 24 Buddhas, and 24 Buddhas recorded in Buddha Vansapali, and the three other Buddhas, Tannankara, Medankara, Saranankara, recorded in commentaries. Maybe some stories about them are recorded in the commentaries. I'm not sure about that. But there's no records of any story beyond them, beyond the Tannankara Buddha. Only the Pussa Buddha's incident, that the Bodhisattva accusing the Pussa Buddha is mentioned. It seems like it is a Buddha before Venerable Tannankara. So these two Buddhas that were mentioned in the Apadana Pali matches with the two Buddhas mentioning in the book, but we cannot guarantee the authenticity of the stories mentioned there. So normally, personally, I don't preach that Dhamma. Previously we used to preach that, but personally, after knowing that it is not found in any of the Theravada commentaries or sub-commentaries, Jataka or any Tipitaka, I actually personally refrain from preaching that story in Dhamma talks actually. So here, if you take this story as something authentic, in that story, a Brahma had determined that the Bodhisattva may think so. And that was the first seed of determination or a wish that arose in him to be a Buddha. And that's also an influence, a positive influence made on the mind of another being by a non-human. Finally, 171, sometimes as mentioned, I shall read. While the being is awake, sometimes deities can prevent other beings from taking certain objects while being awake. When the Buddha and the Sangha observed Vasa in the city of Veranja, Mara influenced the entire city, preventing citizens from recalling the Buddha and the Sangha after spending the rains retreat in their city. Even the Brahmin who invited the Buddha to spend the Vasa could not recall the Buddha was living there, Buddha's presence. No one had the desire to offer food to the Buddha and Sangha during the rainy season. In 171, sometimes as mentioned in the commentary of Mara Tajjaniya Sutta, non-humans create various objects. So humans may have misperceptions. Mara created such objects during the Buddha Kakusandat period. So people had lost their faith in the Sangha and started to accuse the Sangha. Mara Dusi did so to break the faith of humans towards the Buddha Sasana. Mara, in the dispensation of Buddha Gautama, what he did was distracted Venerable Ananda's attention by creating various dreadful objects, while the Buddha was hinting about the possibility for him to live longer. In Mahaparinibbana, it's a very famous story we all know. While the Buddha was hinting that he could live for some other period if he needs, Mara was distracting Venerable Ananda in many occasions, I think in 9 places if I remember. And he couldn't invite Buddha to live long. And that was one of the mistakes they consider that the Venerable Ananda did. But Venerable Ananda didn't consider it as a mistake because it was out of his control. Mara couldn't possess his mind. He created dreadful objects and he was distracted. Because he was a Sotapanna, he has fear and he has dosa in him, uneradicated. And Dusimara created certain objects and made the people to have misconceptions, and that is very common in our literature. Many deities can mislead people by creating objects, by appearing as different beings, and give lots of misinformation. And that's nothing related to influence. But there's some type of influence by giving wrong information, but it's not directly influencing the mind and the body as in the previous cases. So I conclude my lecture. This would end the segment about non-human possession, non-human influence on other beings. When the non-humans possess a certain being, the entire mind and the body is taken under the control of the non-human. In some occasions, they could influence the body, even enter the body, and some other occasions they could influence the mind and make the beings think as they want, and also prevent them from taking certain objects. And this could happen while asleep and also while awake. Yeah. So I conclude the lecture, giving the opportunity to ask questions.
May I ask my question, Venerable sir?
Yes.
My question is based on the points of physical similarities of non-humans. If they have a permanent physical form, is it like that of human beings? I am asking this question because that negative prefix, especially in Pali, now most that non-humans, Manus, is like Manus. That's why I asked this question. And even in English, the negative prefix denotes likeness also sometimes. My question is,
yes, most of the non-humans are like humans, but there are non-humans, petas and so forth, who have different appearances. In common, most of them are like humans with hands and legs, and they are bipedal, and they have heads and all the limbs as we do, and they are mostly like humans. That's why they are called amanussa. A prefix or the nav prefix indicates similarity, but still different. Similar but different, not the same. And they do possess bodies that every being has its own body. Every being has its own body, but normally we cannot change our body that was obtained by the Patisandhi Karma. So, but the non-humans can deform their bodies into some other forms, it is mentioned. But even Nagas could do that, and they could live for a long period in that appearance as well. There is a slight one type of a non-human. Non-human means deities, because now all the other beings in the Kama realm, okay, just leave the Brahma realm because they have their own bodies and they don't change normally. In the Kama realm, it is said that every being, this is discussed in terms of pleasure, sensual pleasure, especially related to sex. So every being in the Kama realm, except the two most realms, Nimman Rati and Paranimita Vasavati, have to satisfy with the appearance of their partner. Because in the Kama realm, it's always natural to have a partner, male or a female. So they have to satisfy themselves with the appearance of the partner. There can be defects, there can be good looks, but you have to be satisfied. You cannot have the partner as you imagine. Especially when having sex. Normally, now it is mentioned in the Naga's realm, a Naga could have sex with a human appearance. But if the Naga is having sex with another Naga, Samana Jatika, they automatically goes into their natural form. They cannot have sex with another Naga in the human appearance. You don't know what is the reason behind that. Maybe there's some psychological influence is there. And if you apply it to other beings, other non-humans as well, they could present themselves in different forms, but it seems while they are having sex with the same species, they come into their original form. But in the Paranimitta Vasavatti and Nimmana Rati, there is some exceptions, as mentioned in the commentaries. Nimmana Rati, the male, the dominant being, desires of a certain figure of the other being, and based on his desire, the form of the other being changes and they have sex in that form. In the Paranimitta Vasavatti, the other being, the other partner, knows the desires of the dominant partner and comes to them in the appearance the partner likes. Paranimitta Vasavatti. That's why the two names were given. Nimmana Rati. They enjoy sex having made their partner to be as they want. Paranimitta Vasavatti means the other partner knows the desire of the dominant person and approaches him with the appearance he likes. So the pleasure is very high in that sense. So that's why it is said the Paranimitta Vasavatti is the highest, has the foremost sensual pleasure in the Kama realm. So it seems this is mentioned in the Itivuttaka commentary actually, because Buddha divided all the Kama in the Kama realm into three groups. Kama of the Paranimitta Vasavatti, Kama of the Nimmana Rati, and the remaining Kamas. Remaining Kamas starting from Tusita till the hells. All of them, because the highest Kama considered is sex. And that, the definitions were based on that. And the highest, the Kama of related to sex was very special in the higher two realms. And the lower realms, starting from Tusita till the bottom, the sex has to be done with especially with the partner whom they like. They have to be satisfied with the appearance the other person has. Humans, even Tavatinsa realm, deities, and all of them. So it shows that a definition, a fundamental is given for the Naga realm, that Nagas could have sex with someone else in a different form, but when they are having sex with the same species, they come into their Naga form. That means they become a snake actually at that time. And if we apply this fundamental into other realms, it shows that even though the non-humans could change their appearance into other figures, while having sex with the same species, they will come into the into their original appearance. But this is different, as Itivuttaka commentary has stated. Paranimitta Vasavatti and Nimmana Rati, they are exceptional cases. They can have sex in different forms. So the pleasure is very high. So the question is, can they change the appearance? Yes, they can change the appearance. Almost every non-human. I don't think the hell beings could change because they are very weak and they are supposed to suffer. Most of the non-humans can change their appearance, but it will have limitations because they will always have their original form. There is something called an original form possessed by the Patisandhi Kamma. You cannot change that actually. The person lives with that till the end. Even Brahmas have that appearance. In the higher Brahma realms, higher ones, starting from the second jhana, they have an identical appearance. But in the lower jhana realms, first Brahma 3 realms, they may possess different appearances. Now, yes, everyone has his basic appearance, even non-human. Non-humans could change it to some time, and it can be a prolonged period, because some Nagas are said to be living in the human realm for a long period. But if they fall into a deep sleep, they will turn into their natural status. Deep sleep. So it shows that there's always limitations. It's like you stay in the Bhavanga, Viti Chittas appear, then again it falls into the Bhavanga. In the same way, the Mula Rūpa means the basic appearance will come back. It will normally comes into that. Even in Nibbana Rati and Parinimita Vatavati, that has to be the same. But there is a limitation in other lives that while having sex with the same species, still they come back to the natural form. But there's exception in the Nibbana Rati and Parinimita Vasavati. They can have sex with the same species with a different form. So this is as you ask this question of having a permanent fixed appearance. This is the information that we get in the literature. These information are very here and scattered here and there. This is what I have read. The answer was given is a creative answer that I gave based on the information that I have gone through. There can be some other information, more information. So this is what I can give from the knowledge that I have.
Thank you very much, my very to your Venerable.
Yes, also. Okay then, since there's no questions, we can conclude. And yeah, this will be the last lecture for this semester because we are going to start our final exams in IIT in another few days. So I'll not be able to give lectures, and during the vacation I'll be traveling abroad. So I'll not be having lectures, giving lectures during May as well. So then our next lecture series will start during June when we start the second semester for the second year in IIT. So see you then. I wish you all the best and hope you enjoyed this season. We could give at least around 10 lectures for this semester, and I hope you got a broader perspective about Chittaja-rūpas. And there will be some aspects of Chittaja-rūpas that will be discussed in June. It's not finished yet. We are going to talk some other interesting topics related to Chittaja-rūpas. So wish you all the best, and may this merit of discussing Dhamma helps us to attain the Nibbana and also be a supporting factor for the lengthening of Buddha Sasana. Buddha Sasanang Chirantittatu, Buddha Sasanang Chirantittatu, Buddha Sasanang Chirantittatu, sadhu, sadhu, sadhu.